we still have more WWE stuff to talk about. Can you believe it? We got the news today. Today, of course, we're recording on October 29. We got news today that WWE is launching a new indie wrestling development program. Now that caught the eye. They're calling it WWE ID. All right. What's this all about? Just in case you are out of the loop. Well, we're gonna read the good old press release from the Fed. WWE today announced the launch of a first of its kind development program designed to provide up and coming independent wrestlers a pathway to a potential career in WWE. The program will be called WWE ID, short for WWE Independent Development. So clever. Just the masters of great branding. WWE is the latest in our efforts to identify and support the journey of up-and-coming wrestlers, in turn raising the profile of and strengthening the independent wrestling ecosystem, said WWE Chief Content Officer Paul Triple H Levesque. Yes, it's the latest in their efforts to support talent and strengthen the indies. You know, WWE, it's long-standing history of looking out for talent, being there to support them, and most importantly, their long-standing travails to strengthen the independent scene. Oh God, just one. This is one effort in a litany of other initiatives. Following the 2021 launch of WWE's NIL program, WWE ID has been constructed to support independent wrestling prospects and wrestling schools with world-class training, development, and mentorship. Under the program, the WWE will provide prominent independent wrestling schools with the ID official designation, with the goal of providing new trainees and existing talent at these select institutions with enhanced developmental opportunities. Booker T's Reality of Wrestling, based in Houston, Cody Rhodes' Nightmare Factory in Atlanta, Seth Rollins' Black and Brave Academy in Davenport, Iowa, Elite Pro Wrestling Training Center in Concord, New Hampshire, and Knox Pro Academy, Los Angeles, the first WWE ID independent wrestling schools to earn the official designation. Additionally, WWE ID will identify top independent wrestling prospects with an official ID prospect designation and support their developmental journey by providing financial opportunity and assisting with training, mentorship, and development, including access to world-class facilities, best-in-class ring training, athletic trainers, and more. WWE ID will give fans the opportunity to follow the paths of these standout prospects on the independent wrestling scene throughout curated, behind-the-scenes content, as well as highlights and matches showcased across WWE's social platforms. So that's very interesting, and definitely created a bit of a somewhat of a what's the word I'm looking for? A tumult, huh? How about that? It created a tumult across the world of pro wrestling to a degree. You know, like ultimately, if it, you know, just to make sure we have the summary right here, this, what do we call it? Let's call it framework. Okay, is going to focus on developing independent talent via wrestling schools out there in the U.S. To create a pipeline for talent for WWE, right? That's essentially it. The facilities, of course, that we're in here, we all talked about them. All of these facilities are going to be designated as such, right? Reality of Wrestling, Nightmare Factory, Black and Brave. Elite Pro Wrestling Training Center is maybe one that we're not necessarily easily aware of. That is that's not a promotion, but a school up in the Northeast, of course. It's ran by a guy named Mike Hollow, who was, I guess a guy that tried to break into the business in the 90s. And he's had a couple of tryouts here and there in WWE, and it apparently never did quite pan out. But now he's 100% like training guys, and he's trained a bunch of people, like a ton of folks that you've heard of. I've gone through his school. So that's Elite Pro Wrestling Training Center. And Nox Pro Academy, that's Rikishi's training school. Just churning out Pacific Islanders for the Bloodline story. But nonetheless, that's pretty much what that's the overall. That's the overall gist of it. I mean, there's a lot of takeaways to do. First of all, look, here's one thing that I want to point out. What did they say? They say in the press release, they call it a first of its kind developmental program. First of its kind. It's like, this is not the first of its kind. Like, this is WWE going back to its roots in that regard, where they would have they'd have Memphis, they'd have OVW, they'd have FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, and these were the training grounds. These were the promotions, the school/promotions where wrestlers were sent to turn into superstars, right? Of course, OVW in the WWE days was probably most famous because of the crop of tremendous superstars that came out of there. Do you need me to reiterate them? Okay, I shall. John Cena, Batista, Brock Lesnar. Who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting one. Randy Orton, I said. Brock. No, that's it. Those are usually the ones, right? Cena, Batista, Brock, and Randy Orton. So this is essentially them going back to their roots in that, So first of its kind, I'm like, oh, come on. No, that's not it. But, I think my first takeaway from all of this was so the Performance Center is not delivering. The NIL program is not returning, the level of results that WWE was clearly expecting, right? I think WWE sort of steps back and they look at the crop of people that they have churning out from the NIL program, the number of people that they cut, don't forget, and the people that are still there, and the level that they're at. Maybe they're realizing what a lot of us had been speculating from the start was you can bring in these college athletes, sure, and they're athletic and they're, tops in their fields, but they've never trained to be a professional wrestler. They've never done it. So they're going to have to go through a certain process before they do get to being ready, being shipshape, being ready for TV. But what's happening in most of these circumstances, instead of giving them time to develop, is that they're just thrown on TV and then they're given titles and whatnot. And everyone says they're developmental. They're developmental. Yeah, but you're trying to pass them off as something else in the meantime. So, I think maybe WWE is looking at this and they're looking at the amount of time that it takes to train someone to their satisfaction. And they're like, maybe we're not benefiting from the NIL product as much. Maybe we're not benefiting as much from the Performance Center as we think we are, right? I think it's taking too much time turning these green rookies into capable performers. So, essentially what WWE is doing is they're offloading the costs of getting these kids into ring shape they're offloading that to the partner schools, and then they pick them up when the time is right to mold them into the WWE and into the WWE superstar that they need. They'll already likely be learning the house style from all of these places. Now they're just going to bring them in here, and then they bring them up to WWE, whether it be NXT or main roster, and they're already kind of ready to go. Not unlike what used to happen with the black and gold. When the black and gold was at its best, it was when they were bringing in indie stars, people from, promotions across the ocean, so on and so forth, but bringing these very complete athletes, pro wrestlers, into the NXT process, but they're all ready to go. You're not going to have Adam Cole go through, hip toss class. You're not going to have Samoa Joe run the ropes for 15 minutes. That's not what we're doing. That's not what they were doing, and that's not what that promotion was for. It's not what NXT and that vision was for either. So, to a degree, I believe that this is a lot smarter for WWE. I think this is a pretty big deal. And I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be great for them, right? Because they're going to end up with talent that they want, that is going to be able to actually wrestle, different styles and whatnot. They'll have touched on the indies and then come back and then hone into what the boss wants, and they'll be able to go. They won't have these people overly scripted, who wrestle, and as they're wrestling, you can see they're thinking about the next few spots. They're just executing. You'll have pro wrestlers. So for them, I think that it's a very good step, and I think it's a decision that comes at the detriment of the Performance Center, where, they're not going to say this part out loud, but I think there is more and more of a realization that the Performance Center isn't necessarily that turning out the level, the amount, the quantity of stars that we want for the future. That turns out it's a lot of work starting from ground zero, when perhaps they thought that it would be rather simple with, gymnasts coming in and, football players and other athletes, and be like, we can get them from the get-go and really shape them as we want. But they just, none of them are coming in here like big pro wrestling fans. A lot of your indie stars out there decided to go to the indies and do pro wrestling because they just love pro wrestling, because they grew up on it and they're like, this is my dream, and this is how they're doing it. For a lot of these NIL kids, volleyball, once you're done with volleyball, on the NCAA circuit, there's no pro league. I think I've talked about this before. If there's a pro league, there's no money in that. Who watches college or pro volleyball, if that even exists, right? I think there's beach volleyball, but that's an entirely different thing. It's not the same thing as volleyball itself. So, you get the call and they're looking out, you apply, it works out. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I could do pro wrestling. The thing that fascinates me here is this idea, this idea that maybe the NIL program isn't exactly turning results the way we wanted, or the PC isn't churning out great results, while there were rumors not that long ago that the Performance Center might be headed to Las Vegas, which is where basically TKO is set up, and has just invested for the UFC, has just invested in the Apex, right? Their own multi-million training center. And since TKO right now is is still in cost-cutting mode following the merger, right? We've seen it not that long ago where a lot of corporate people lost their jobs because there's redundancies. Well, maybe TKO is looking at the books here and is like, why do we need two state-of-the-art, multi-million training centers? All we need is just one. And one of them is like set in, the Fight City, essentially, in Vegas, while the other one is all the way in Florida. There were those rumors, and I still think there might be truth to that because it makes sense. So maybe all of these things are starting to happen and could be aligning with this strategy that WWE TKO has, where they need to maybe innovate their talent acquisition process in order to be less dependent on the PC if the Apex is going to become their new thing, and it's going to be an entire new reality where WWE is not going to be running around doing is not going to be running around in the Apex doing whatever the hell they want. They're going to be, they're going to have roommates. They're going to have to share this spot. They're going to have to share this spot with someone else, and they're not used to that. WWE is just used to doing everything that, everything they want on their terms all the time. So that's going to be very different at the same time. So I believe, and I believe it will be, also good for a certain set of professional wrestlers. Well, for not the professional wrestlers, but it's going to be good for the schools, because the schools now will be able to advertise that they have the hookup, right? They have a direct pipeline to WWE. Come train here, and we'll get you on TV, kind of thing. If you work hard, you'll get noticed. There are people watching. I heard it's Gabe Sapolsky is going to be overwatching everything. He loves the indies. Gabe does. He just loves the independents. And you're gonna be scouted. You're gonna be scouted constantly, and if you make it, well, you might get this deal. And I'm curious to see how it's gonna work out. Because like I said, it's gonna be good for business, I believe, for the schools. But how it pertains to talent, I'm taking the wait and see approach. Because there's something about this that still feels a little tough enough to me, where it's like, yeah, come compete, and the winner is going to get a contract on TV, and that really, it didn't pan out all that often, all that much. It happened more to people who were runners up, and the premise of Tough Enough never ended up really delivering, So I'm wondering, here it might be different because it has real life business implications. So it might be different, right? But that sort of lingers. But nonetheless, despite these little qualms, these quibbles that I may have, I believe, objectively speaking, this can only be seen as a big win for WWE, setting up all these schools in different territories, right? Have you noticed? We've got, down in Dallas, in Georgia, up in the Midwest, the Northeast, and in California. So you're covering, a lot of the major territories. It's kind of like the shades of the NWA divvying up the map here. But this is kind of the feeling that you get here, where, you know, these people are the way geographically everything is spread out. Like, they're touching everyone everywhere. They'll have their toes dipped into indie promotions just about everywhere, right? Because that's just how it's going to be. I think this is legitimately a big win for them. I think that's a huge win for them. But historically speaking, when WWE wins, pro wrestling in general loses. Because let's not forget, WWE's main objective is to look out for WWE. You don't believe me? Vince McMahon in his own documentary said those exact words. He said it himself. And here I'm paraphrasing, but he said that whatever I was doing to their businesses, it doesn't matter. The only business that mattered was mine. So he doesn't care about and WWE doesn't care about the status of pro wrestling. WWE cares about WWE. Which brings me to my concerns. Which brings me to the concerns that I have here, right? Because the most important thing that we have to point out here is that we don't know what this means for indie wrestlers. We don't know. Yeah, all of this is very bare bones. And of course, we haven't seen any of, we haven't seen any of the terms that these wrestlers agreed to. You know, WWE says that they'll support them financially. Okay, so does that mean they give them money? Are they on the payroll? Like, how does this work? What is, you know, what exactly happens here? Does the wrestler have free run of the independents, or does WWE start booking them? Or does he have to approve his bookings to WWE? Or will WWE have a set, an established set of promotions that these wrestlers will be allowed to work in, right? If you're signed, look, the basic example is if you're signed, if you're a prospect, if you have a WWE ID and you're a pro wrestler, can you work GCW? Can you work House of Glory? Can you work Beyond? Can you work West Coast Pro? We don't know. Or will it be, that's it. Can the wrestler do whatever he or she wants? Or will the office have a hands-on approach? If you were to ask me, my gut says they will have a hands-on approach. A very hands-on approach. Terribly hands-on. And, you know, the same type of questions I have in regards to, you know, in regards to the schools still maintains, right? Like, is this a partnership that can be ended at any moment? You know, what's the deal? Or does WWE have one of these weird clauses in the contract like it had with some promotions in the past that they were partnered up with, where WWE could like shut it down at any given moment or just assimilate it, right? Just like purchase it outright and whoop, nope, now you're ours. They grab all the tapes and then they shut everything down, right? Which is something they have done in the past. Like I'm not trying to meme here. Like, this is reality. This is how things have always worked. So, you know, even for the schools themselves, how bulletproof are they? What kind of relationship does this entail? Right? So, you know, I like, of course, I couldn't tell you. No one can tell you right now. We don't know what these deals look like. Of course, through this. So, you know, like I mentioned, the autonomy of the schools and the talent, to me, is my biggest question, and I think might end up being the biggest losing part here, right? It might be, it might be the biggest part in which the independents lose their identity, because WWE is not going to tell these schools, yeah, go ahead and teach them like lucha libre. Go ahead and teach them, you know, some deep puro stylings, you know. No. they're going to want these people to learn the house style. So I think as a viewer, or as a wrestling fan, what we're going to end up having is a homogenization of pro wrestling on the indies. If this goes a little too far, you might just be seeing WWE style everywhere you're going. And I think that's again a very plausible scenario, because WWE is not going to develop people to go off and do things they don't want them to do. They're going to want to stick to the plan. And like I said, they are going to be very hands-on with this. They're not just going to be like, okay, guys, go do your thing. No. They're going to be following this to a T. Gabe is going to be the rep. They're going to make sure that everything works. So, I'm sort of fearful of a loss of personality, a loss of character amongst the indies as the environment becomes perhaps a little more WWE-ified. And what if someone wants to break away from that eventually? Maybe they're like, you know what, this isn't for me, and I'd like to go do a tour of Japan. How there's still too many things I find that are, and rightfully so, because it's all only a press release that we received here, but there's a lot of things that are so much up in the air right now that I don't know how anyone can 100% throw their support behind it and give it a thumbs up, knowing how restrictive WWE can be, or is, even to its current talent. And there's no proof to the opposite. There's nothing that shows in WWE's behavior these days that they'll do things differently, because there's a lot of things happening, and we've talked about it on this very show. A lot of things happening that don't exactly that if you had told me Vince had made that decision, I'd believe you, but Vince is no longer around. Anyway, so I understand that WWE's goal is the pipeline, right? It's to create a pipeline. They're saying we want to bolster the indies and so on and so forth. No, what they want to do is create a pipeline of talent for them so that they can benefit and no one else. So you're not benefiting. Let's make sure we get that clear. We're not benefiting the independent circuit here, where we're creating little farm leagues everywhere. And, using a model that is applicable in sports in general, which is fine. I always thought it was a little silly, the NIL thing, where it's for multiple reasons. I'm not getting back into it. I always thought it was a little silly. And I thought, and I was like, well, why aren't we doing this with pro wrestlers instead? Well, now they're doing it, right? And I'm still not convinced that it's the best idea, until WWE shows that they don't mind, that they don't care. If someone wants to go wrestle for AEW or whatever, that they can just, they have the big man's blessing. But if they don't, and everything is restricted, then yeah, it's just it's a pipeline. It's just, it's a pipeline created specifically for them, and they will be the only ones to benefit. Now, I will understand when I understand if you say, well, of course they're putting all their money into it. Why wouldn't they benefit? That, sure. But why not some real initiatives? Why not just some real open initiatives where it's where you're not so clear on your intentions, where it's not so weird. Just yeah, we're going to fund, we're going to fund these wrestlers. We're going to fund these schools. And that's it. No, you have to create these relationships, and they're WWE IDs. And we're going to do, backstage vignettes to follow the progression of these stars. And I'm like, okay. All very strange stuff. That's just it. It's and then it got me thinking. On top of that, then it got me thinking. They have these relationships set up in Japan, right? With Marigold, with Noah, Pro Wrestling Noah, and I'm like, and everyone was saying, well, they're not gonna go out and try to get into Puro. They've tried so many times before. They're not going to buy anyone. If they start up their own promotion, it's not going to work. The market is already saturated and it's struggling right now. What if they came in under this guise here? What if they came in under the guise of this WWE ID stuff and just arrive in the country and they're like, hey, we are going to shape stars here in Japan to come wrestle under the glitz and glamour of WWE. No more working in front of 1,500 people in what do you call it? Your Karuken Hall. We're not big venues, stadiums. That's with us. Money, American dollars. The yen's in the tank. Why don't you come? We'll take care of you. And then why not go back to the UK then? I'm not even kidding. Why not go back to the UK then? Go anywhere with this. You don't have to establish infrastructure. You don't have to do like you did in the UK and build a performance center there too. You don't have to set up offices. You just need a couple of trustworthy operatives that hang around locally and set up these relationships, and you're golden. But I don't trust WWE. I don't trust them. And history is there to back us up on this. History shows multiple times that anytime WWE has tried to work with others, it's always ended in disaster for the others. Every single time. WWE is not in the business of elevating anything else than WWE, and there is 50 years of proof to back us up. There's 50 years of proof. We're not going to pretend here. We're not going to pretend that this might be this great elevative thing. And the last impact, of course, and I think this is a very reasonable connection to make here, AEW. This is absolutely going to have an impact, if you ask me, on the acquisition of talent for AEW. And I think this is also one of the reasons why they decided to do it. I think it's probably not the tippy top one, but is absolutely one of the most significant reasons why they decided to pull this off. It's to throw a little more sand in the AEW gears. And I'm sorry, prove me wrong. If WWE right now goes out scouting and is able to snatch up great talent, let's say there's a Nick Wayne running around and AEW is not quite ready to sign him, disregard what happened with the contract when you turn 18 and all that stuff, right? Let's say there's another Nick Wayne type running around and AEW has a shine on him, but next thing you know, WWE just scoops him up and gives him a WWE ID. What can be done? What can be done then? Is this like some kind of contract? What are the deal? What's the deal? What is the deal? And can that person just go off and wrestle for the other guys? See, I don't think so. I think this is part of what it is. It's like WWE just wants to prevent AEW from having such a good pipeline to talent, and they'll know that if they put a chokehold on them, that's going to that may have a disfavorable impact down the road. You never know. And it's a shame because, if AEW had made investments in its own talent acquisition, its own talent development system, it could lead to challenge, they could probably be in a better position to challenge this kind of situation, because now the market is becoming extremely competitive for young up-and-coming talent. So, AEW might have a harder time attracting wrestlers who maybe in the past would have been like, yeah, I want to go work for you guys because it seems a lot cooler, it's a lot chiller, no Vince McMahon. Now, well, they can get them really early in their development and they'll have them train at the PC or whatever, the Apex, wherever they end up, which are, don't get me wrong, glamorous, impressive, state-of-the-art facilities, very impressive. You know, when you're a youngster coming up, you walk in, you see that, you holy shit. Like, I'm not, you know, we're not holding, you know, training sessions at at some dingy Gold's Gym or whatever. We're training here. Like, these are our facilities. AEW can't offer that. There's a lot of stuff that AEW can compete with on that level. But that's the advantage that a billion-dollar company with hundreds of people on staff has. They can run their creative and have their shows, and then in the meantime, have a whole other department work on growth, work on talent acquisition, talent development, a luxury that AEW does not have right now. So it's going to be interesting on that end, and it's absolutely, I believe it 100%. It's going to have an impact on All Elite Wrestling's talent acquisition for 100%. So, I guess if I'm to wrap this up, if I'm to sort of conclude this point, I think that there's something very beneficial for those who will benefit, which is weird to say, but you know, I think the schools are absolutely going to benefit. I think there are some wrestlers who are going to take advantage of this and are probably going to be much better off. We'll see. But I have an issue with WWE exerting more control over the independent circuit. I have a legitimate issue with that. And, you know, I saw a lot of people commenting saying, oh, well, the indies are dead. Now it's official, the indies are dead, right? I'm like, well, they're not dead yet. And a lot of people, you know, and you know, there's, you know, I'm a firm believer in the precept that nature abhors a void, right? You know, in the UK, once WWE ransacked the place and ran off, they're rebuilding. They are currently rebuilding in the UK, and it's looking promising. You know, we're not quite there yet, but we're absolutely on our way. I personally don't think the indies were in such a great place right now. I don't think there's not as far as national indies go. Can't speak too much on regional. I do hear a lot of good things on very regional spots, but when it comes to national indies, I don't think we're in a great spot either. A lot of the talent coming through the pipe here is a lot of the talent existing on the indies right now are just, a lot of them are just not ready for the big leagues, you know? So I think WWE is coming in at a moment where it's ripe to do so, where the indies are just not a hotbed anymore. It's not spectacular. It's not the thing. It's not a thing anymore. Like even GCW has, which is, you know, who is unquestionably the biggest independent promotion in the United States, is not as hot. It's not feeling as hot as it once was. It's just, you know, maintaining what it does to keep the fan base happy, but they're not attracting anyone new. Shows are full, but it's pretty much always the same people, right? It's just not the same. So, you know, I see the indies in a position of weakness, and WWE, being who they are, have seen and have felt this weakness and have decided to swoop in under the guise of something cool and charitable and with good intentions, but has the potential to do some significant damage to the U.S. Indies. I really don't know how this is going to work out, but we will see. We will see how things go. We're absolutely going to we're absolutely going to learn more about this as this goes on. We're not quite sure when this is going to be implemented. There was no date or whatnot as to when they're going to start this. So at some point they're just going to drop it. It's going to be like, hey, all right, we're doing it. These are our first WWE ID signees, and we'll just see what happens. But I'm keeping this at arm's length, and I just hope my gut is wrong, but usually it's right. That's the problem.